What up?
Hey,
Hey, how are you guys?
it's been too long, brother.
I know, man. Actually, like, I wish I woke up earlier because, like, I was just really enjoying that discussion you guys were doing with Ben. It was like getting pretty deep. Like, it was getting pretty complex, man. That was pretty awesome. But how are you guys doing?
Good. My headphones are dead. I've been going. How long we been going now?
7 hours.
Seven.
I think.
What?
Something. No, I can't. No, sorry. Three. Wait, no, we still have four.
What about MaxDap? Where's MaxDap?
He bailed. He saw I was sticking around, and he's like, "I'm out."
Nice.
Meanwhile, like my wife had to leave the house, and she's like, "Let me know when you're off." Still
nice.
So what? Tell everyone about dMail. I think you're another app that almost everyone has heard of already. But for the 2 or 3 people in the audience who haven't, why don't we just do the TLDR summary on what is dMail?
Yeah, for sure. So dMail is a application that allows you to send email without having an email address in blockchain-based applications. And maybe I can kind of describe it from like the problem that I saw. Like, I saw that people were logging into exchanges like decentralized exchanges and games and a lot of these other things, and it just seemed like a pattern to me that seems really interesting. Whenever I see something that's kind of a pattern, I start to pay attention, and just like new uses of internet tech, right? And I thought it's really interesting because if you go into a DEX and you buy $1 million worth of some coin, you're doing it on a wallet without any way of receiving a receipt or any kind of communication, like from that DEX or the game even. And I just saw it as a big opportunity, actually, to open up a line of communication there. So in a dMail kind of world, if I bought that $1 million worth of whatever shitcoin I wanted to buy, then that exchange could send me a really very meaningful message about what I just bought and some information about that token. Maybe what wallets are supported by that token, how I can move it around, what things I can do with that token, maybe something very specific to it. And then you imagine like an e-commerce world where people are buying, shirts or whatever with crypto. You can also send very meaningful receipts and information. It could just be a game like, hey, EOS Knights just released a new like shield or something, right? And there's no real way to do that. When I log into EOS Knights, because I've been playing it a little bit and like learning more about games, and I realized they also don't have a way to communicate at all, and they're really restricted with their communication because they're not even supported by the App Store. So dMail is really like a way of skipping the email address and going straight to blockchains, and now your wallet ID is your email address.
And I like, are you able to share your screen and do a demo of the Blocks.io integration they just added? I think that surprised me the other day. I think you tweeted about it.
Yeah,
this is super cool.
Yeah, for sure. I haven't used this program that we're using here, so I don't know how the screen sharing works, but I can try.
I think you hover over your own video, and it should be an option in there, like on your screen.
Okay. Well, let me make sure there's nothing like weird on my computer. Like,
we want the weird, dude. Type in P, dude. Type in P in your address bar.
Yeah, dude. Hold on a second. Just give me a sec. Yeah. I also need to make sure my wallet is open as well.
Well, I'll start walking through the problem case here, and then you can figure out the solution on your screen. So the problem is like the way that dApps or anyone communicates on chain right now is they memo spam, and it's annoying. And there's actually a way to do it now without actually paying any EOS. As long as you have the CPU resources to do it, you could just spam everyone. And it's like it's like getting spam email without the spam filters, because there's just so many messages, and when you look at it on a block explorer, that you probably miss anything important. Whereas with dMail, the dMail token itself is basically its main utility is anti-spam, because you have to actually give, it's like you described it really well the other day where you mentioned it, how it's like a wax stamp model, where it's like a reusable stamp is kind of how the mail token works. So if I send a token to one person, I'm actually giving them my mail token as like a stamp. And if they don't own any other mail tokens, they can only send that one stamp back until they get more stamps. So if you're like someone who's like notoriously spamming people, you're eventually going to run out of stamps.
Yeah. So I'll talk a little bit about that, because like just like a nerd, like it's really fun for me to think about the history. But I'm also sharing my screen here to show you, like, this is our contract here. So a great thing about blockchains too is you can see every single communication that's happening on our on our contract here. So like today, EOS Dev X sent some mail to the developer, which is pretty cool. I like that. I know who's doing what. And some people think that might be a little bit scary, but the contents of the message aren't there. And Blocks just added this little integration. I don't know if you guys can see this clearly or not, but I was like really excited about this, because I haven't really seen this before, where like it's almost like they're adding like rich information to memos, like it's detecting what's going on. And I really love that a lot. I think that there's actually a lot of potential behind developing out a more rich memo system. And even the memo spam actually was something that inspired me to build this product too, because I saw that, like, if you go back in history on email, yeah, I probably shouldn't open this up here. Whatever. That's what I'm saying, dude. I fucking hate that shit. Let me stop sharing here so I don't open up some more shit. So if you go back in history, like, this idea is not new at all. I mean, email is not really that new. Email, like communicating on IDs that people log in with, this is like what traditional email is. But it goes back to this wax stamping model of like, think of Game of Thrones. When you want to send a scroll from one dude to another dude, you use your wax stamp to say, well, this is me, and this is like, I'm authorizing this thing. And then when it is received on the other side, you have this stamp there that proves that I made some kind of effort. So then if you go back, or then fast forward to stamps, like, in order for me, like, I put the body or the contents inside of this envelope, and then I put a stamp onto it. And that's the only thing that allows the mailman to bring it to the other destination, right? So if there is no stamp, then the mailman's like, fuck you, I'm not sending it, right? So, I mean, hopefully it doesn't say that, but then and the beauty of this is that when the other person receives it on the other side, the way mail works is like, that stamp is now useless, right? Like you have to go back to the post office and buy another stamp. But the way that mail token works is that token is now in my wallet and can be reused. So it's really like a reusable stamp. So hopefully that kind of makes sense to people. It's not really that new. This is actually bringing that stamping concept into a digital world, and it actually doesn't really exist. Like, you have kind of this signature model, but that isn't really like a utility in the way that a wax stamp or an actual postage stamp is. This is the digital version of that utility. You and Rob with your cats.
They just roam free.
Nice.
Yeah, so I think that's a cool topic of discussion, though, is how a lot of things on blockchain aren't actually new concepts. So you mentioned this wax stamp model that existed, like airline point miles, credit card points, Chuck E. Cheese tokens. Like, all of these things always, or not always, but they've existed for a really long time.
Yeah.
They're just kind of reaching that next stage of innovation. Even like staking models. I was at Aldi the other day, and have you ever been to like Aldi or a place like it where you stake a quarter into the buggy, the cart, to pull it out, and you use it for your shopping trip, and you get the quarter back whenever you put it back where it belongs? It's almost like a staking system. So you're staking a quarter to rent the buggy to rent the cart for its utility around the grocery store. And as long as you deliver the cart back to the cart stand, you receive your stake back. So I see stuff like this all the time in like the real world. And I'm like, this is like a good example of like what we're doing on a blockchain, but it's in the real world and no one even makes these connections here. It's crazy.
I've never used a system like that, but that is a really kind of obvious staking model. That's pretty cool, actually.
And it's just basically so that they don't have to pay someone to put your carts back. You're incentivized to put it back because you want your stake back.
Yeah.
Or if you'd rather.
So here's another example of like email of the past. So I started looking into like the history. Actually, this idea of putting a cryptographic kind of signature on something goes all the way back to like the 90s, actually, like way pre-cryptocurrency. Like people proposed doing this with faxes before because people were sending fax spam as well. You could spam fax messages to people. And it's meaningful because faxes could be at like a major, trading firm or something like that. And as I walked back and tried to like figure out in history like where this came from, there's also Hashcash and these proof of work algorithms for email really early on, pre-cryptocurrency. And then I kind of just went really deep down the rabbit hole as I was researching. I started researching this maybe around November, right? Because it was kind of an aha moment. I was like, wow, there's no email on blockchains at all. It doesn't exist. It's weird. And so I started looking into kind of the history of how email came about. And we take it for granted. Like I'm even 37 and I feel like I was raised in a world where like just email is email. Like it's just this thing that was there, right? You never think about at one point in time, there were dudes like us that are evangelizing EOS to people. There were some evangelists of like the internet and what email might do if people adopt it, you know what I mean? And so if you look at the early email, it's really a pretty interesting story where the early internet kind of had this transaction layer, sort of like blockchains do, but there was no communication layer. And then these hackers and nerds decided, you know what, like what if this terminal, instead of just sending this really like kind of static financial transaction or like, hi, the data has loaded or whatever it was saying before, right? If I just sent a message to Bob, like, wow, what a novel concept, you know what I mean? And then they baked that into whatever infrastructure there was there. And it was called informal messaging because there was no standards at all. There was no SMTP or anything like that. And then all of these companies came out and were kind of fighting with each other over who's going to build the standard. And then eventually it became SMTP. So it was like really informal and kind of a mess, sort of like blockchains are now. And so what I believe is there is going to be a full communication standard for these kind of transactions and rich messaging, receipts, and all of this stuff. And I believe that will be an email. And so hopefully dMail becomes that standard, and for all blockchains too, not just EOS, right?
So you mentioned actually, Jacques, you mentioned earlier an old project of yours whenever you first got started in Bitcoin. How you want to like, I don't know if Kurt heard that part, but Kurt's got an interesting background because he works in the behind the scenes role of building all kinds of cool shit. And you really don't see him front and center a lot of times. And he probably can't even talk publicly about some of the projects he's worked on. But
yeah, it's a little more under contract, honestly. And like, so I don't really talk about it very much, but yeah, that's part of it.
Yeah. I mean, I've just heard through like the grapevine. I don't know all of them or any of them actually. But are you able to talk about the Bitcoin one? Because I thought that one was super interesting. Like your first one, I believe it was. Yeah,
for sure.
Because you're an OG. So Jacques an OG also. I'm not an OG. I didn't get into this stuff. I thought crypto was a scam for years. Years. It took until like late 2016, early 2017 for me to buy my first crypto. I'm not an OG, but the two of you guys are. And Jacques mentioned earlier a message, I think it was messaging on Bitcoin and how hard it was to make. And you're an OG also, and you were kind of in the same boat. And you want to explain your Bitcoin application, Kurt?
Yeah, sure. So when like it was around, so how I got into crypto actually is probably the story. Like I built a application. I used to work in an accelerator called Amplify, and they built a lot of really great apps, and they're one of LA's like top accelerators, right? And so I kind of floated around as a CTO on different projects there until finally this project came in that I thought was really interesting, where they were building this fiat-based microtransactions that was micro-funding on like small videos. It was basically micro-funding like Vine videos, right? So fast forward, Tim Draper is really interested in the idea, join as CTO. He funds us, and I didn't know who the hell Tim Draper was at all. So I look into his portfolio and I find this bullshit site called Coinbase, and it was built on Bootstrap. It was just kind of like, just this funny money bank. And I just, for some reason, I just couldn't get it out of my mind what they were doing, and just went way deep in, man. Like when I started buying Bitcoin, I think it was the end of 2011. So actually, like, I'm not OG in the like OG sense. Like there are guys that I know that are like, yeah, you got in kind of late, bro. Like $5 Bitcoin. Like, yeah, we were buying it when it was real cheap. And so I just got obsessed. I kept getting more and more obsessed. The first thing that I did in Bitcoin was made a proposal to my business to take all of the money that Tim Draper gave to us, which was about $250,000, and hold it in Bitcoin around 2012. And we figured that he would approve it, but everybody thought it was kind of crazy. I've done the math on that. It's like, I don't know, like $100 million or something like that probably would have been made from that. I don't remember where the math is, like at its all-time high. But I was really deep in Bitcoin. And I just thought, we're building all these mobile apps, and mobile was still a little bit new and fresh. Like there wasn't a lot, like you couldn't have had Uber at that time because it was just, mobile phones sucked. And so, but chat was pretty cool. Chat was emerging as like this thing, right? And so we came up with this concept called Talk Chain, and we built a Bitcoin chat app. And I'm pretty sure at the beginning of, that time in mobile was probably the first, other than troll boxes, was probably the most popular chat application for talking about cryptocurrencies. And that did pretty well for maybe a half year or something. And then that got absorbed by a company called, it was built by a company called Afty, and then that was absorbed into Geeking. And now it's still a pretty hot chat app, but they've just absorbed all of the topics like, comics and Bitcoin. I was actually a little bit bummed that it didn't become its own separate thing, because it was like I would wake up every morning and just be reading about Bitcoin and crypto and chat, and it was so lively. And the only other options you had at the time was like a troll box, if you guys remember those.
Yeah. So that was the kind of point I was trying to make, is I don't think a lot of people know how long you've been around and that you've been in messaging just as long as you've been in crypto. And I think that's a huge feather in your cap that you don't talk about publicly enough. I think you're like, do you like kind of being a behind the scenes guy, or do you?
Kind of, yeah, because I'm sort of introverted, and I like to build stuff. I kind of like to invent things. And so I just kind of spend a lot of my time doing research. And I have close friends that I like Ben is one of my best friends, for example, but like I don't really like that many people, like straight up, and I'm kind of choosy about it, but it's because I'm an introvert, and so I'm not, like, even lately I've gotten more on the business side, but for me it's really about how many people use it, and that's like really what I've kind of tied my success towards, is how many people might use it. Because crypto is especially kind of like scammy in the way that people will travel around the world and do these talks and stuff, and then you kind of look behind the scenes to see what is actually going on with their apps and stuff, and just like not a lot. And like I'm an app developer, like I've been an app developer for 14 years. Like I built a chat app even long before this application that had 50,000 active users. For me, it's all about who's using it and like how much they love it and how it can kind of be involved, a part of their life. Like for me, if I get on a podcast or something, it's more about just evangelizing like the product for me.
Yeah, and I think Dan's actually said something about this in the public Telegram before, when people asked him why he doesn't do conferences. Anyone who's ever traveled for a conference, that's like days out of your life. Not only like the time at the conference and your keynote for 1 hour, but it's all the other stuff. It's traveling for an entire day there and back. So that's all time taking away from building. And if you're actually a builder and that's what you want to do and that's what makes you happy, then like more power to you. So It's cool.
Yeah, I mean, like, so my background is actually in sports. Like I was a skateboarder, and I was really very similar in that way. Like I just really wanted to focus on my trade and not so much on like how many people might know me or something like that. But crypto's different. It's like it's funny because like in crypto, like my Twitter is basically sucked for 6 years. Like, and all of a sudden, like if I tweet about crypto stuff, it's like 30 retweets, and I'm like, wow, dude, that's a lot, you know. So it's kind of tempting, I guess, because you can climb the ranks on like how popular you are in crypto much easier than you can if you were like just doing some other industry. Like imagine being a healthcare influencer or something. Like, good luck. It'll take you 10 years with that. So it can be tempting too.
I've asked a lot of people, are you going to be in DC for the June event?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't. Yeah, I want to, but I also don't like traveling that much. I feel kind of like lucky in that sense. I don't really love to be on the road. I want to go to the EOS hackathons. That's like my decision. Is like EOS hackathons are what I want to do.
I hope they announce more for later this year. I really, really hope that they continue that. And I don't see why they wouldn't. It was seriously one of the best times of my life last November. I went to the San Fran one. I'm super jealous of people that got to go to more than one of them. But
dude, I think we should do one in LA. I think it'll be huge. And I don't think we need Block One's permission either. I think we should do one in LA.
Let's do it. I'll promote it.
Yeah. Are we going to give out some tokens or what?
Yeah, let's do it. So who wants some mail? Who wants some mail tokens? How do we want to do it?
I don't know. Whatever. I wrote a script last night. I wrote my own little airdrop script, dude. I was surprised. It only took me like 15 minutes to do it, man. It was like I thought it was going to be way harder. So we could just collect addresses and just blast them out. I have this dMail blaster account that yeah, let's hook some people up, dude.
Yeah, I think they're hearing us on a slight delay, but I'm not seeing account names popping up or anything. You guys must not want to send dMail messages.
Anybody that signs up, I think that's what our plan was, right? Anybody that pops in, they all share their address when they come in, right?
Yep, exactly. So we actually have our little well, it's not exactly a script, so we could tip directly in our interface. So what I did was like collect everyone's EOS account and just tip everybody in like a big long list. So
there's a good question here. If you see Sense and dMail together, I mean, that would be pretty legit. You know, like I think a lot of people get confused about chat being similar to or being like crossover with email. It's really very different. It's kind of like thinking that maybe Gmail and Telegram are a similar thing when they're really not. It's yeah, newsletters, dude. Jonathan, you're so right. Like we're ready for that right now. Just imagine going to like everything EOS and opting in with your wallet address, right? And having a list of 2,000 people that can receive messages from everything EOS that are rich, you know, messages. That's what we want to do for sure.
You're killing our surprises, man. Everyone that signed up for the developer courses with the free trial for voting for Cypherglass, that account list will be getting airdrops and NFTs and all kinds of cool stuff in the future. We just
nice
have to roll it out. So we're right on board with you.
Nice. Yeah.
The newsletter would be awesome.
Yeah, I think that's like, you know, email has so many things to it, like, you know, newsletters, you know, programmatic, the ability for people to send out rich messaging in a programmatic way is what I'm excited about. Like that's something I'm going to be working on and probably have done in about 2 weeks, where we can give Nudex or somebody an NPM module where they just like any action that happens on a wallet address could have a message associated with it too. That's kind of like our goal, sort of like SendGrid.
So I have an idea and a question all wrapped up.
Sorry, I'm shilling really hard, guys. Like
it's all good. This is the Shillcast. It's not a Dapathon anymore. It's the Shillcast. So with dMail, so it costs a token to send the message, and then the receiver receives that token, and they could resend it to whoever they want. Are there plans in the future to, on an account by account basis, set a minimum amount of mail tokens to even receive that mail? Because maybe I want to like really level up my anti-spam, and I want to make it so that someone has to send at least 10 mail tokens to me for it to even hit my inbox.
Yeah, absolutely. So like, I kind of see that what we're doing is like, you guys are familiar with earn.com, right? I think that what we've kind of done that hopefully we realize is we've built sort of earn.com for everybody. Like anybody could use earn.com. It's not really like centralized in the sense, like there's some things that are centralized about our service, but the part where you use it like earn.com is not centralized, because anybody can attain the tokens and anybody can send messages to anybody, right? So you really allow anybody to use the service the way they want to. And in the that would be dmail.co, Alejandro. So yes, after a while, like I already see that Rob receives some spam for him because he's like really famous. And so like he shows me that he gets these spam messages, and like what I really love about seeing it, it's like, wow, people get it, that you can use these tokens to go message somebody like Rob about, hey bro, like, and they'll probably pay attention because Rob might not pay attention to you and Zach might not respond to your Telegram. Like I get excited when Zach responds to my Telegram messages because of how fucking famous you guys are getting, you know? So
I mean, Telegram just sucks, man. Like you cannot, like you miss DMs because you have notifications off by default. So if someone wants to really get a hold of me, message me on Twitter or somewhere where like I'm not getting hammered with messages, or dMail, zach.vr, hit me up on there.
Yeah, so I do want to do that because eventually the Zachs and Robs and Jocks and everybody of the world are going to get too many messages. So you should be able to set a threshold. And I think that there's a lot of other dynamics that are going to come into play. Like, what if people can acquire dMail tokens at a, without much cost or something like that? That also, so I have this like really long-term plan where it's fully decentralized all the way down to the DNS layer, so that nobody can ever get in the way of your messages, and you own your messages more like a cryptocurrency than like somebody else kind of custodies. Like we're kind of viewing the messaging and your payload as your property, like a crypto too. And you should be able to frankly leave dMail wherever you want and go wherever you want with your property, just like you do a wallet, right? But eventually it'll be too cheap, so people will, like people that are popular that get spam, they can set their threshold higher. And the way that we've designed it too is that there's nothing stopping us from, signing dMail messages with Stellar tokens or any other thing. And we've actually talked to some companies that they're very interested in signing the messages with their own tokens to use dMail. And I think that may be possible in the future. So.
Did you say Stellar? Do you just mean like EOS tokens, or are you talking about other blockchain tokens?
Yeah, other blockchains, like there's like, if you wanted to, like, one is Ripple, and I know everybody hates Ripple, but let's just like,
for good reasons.
Hold on, man. If we're gonna talk about Ripple, I gotta put on a disguise.
Yeah, you might have to do. Yeah, where did that go? All right, so I have to be careful too. Yeah, emails are already encrypted, Enrique. Yeah, but so let's say Ripple, the currency that it's a very controversial currency. But I started kind of preaching about Ripple, about how it's sort of like a Trojan horse in disguise, because you have like crypto psychos that are on the right side, and then you have these like fiat crazies on the left side, like banks and stuff, right? Like Ripple is sort of like this center product that kind of binds us all together in a weird way.
And that's why everybody hates it, because like it's not on our camp.
Yeah. And so I know that this is controversial, but come on, let's put on our tinfoil hats here. I almost feel like Ripple is like it's like almost like if Ripple wasn't there, we might be in a war or something, right? But let's say Ripple builds all these crazy financial transactions. There is also no communication layer on top of those transactions. There's no receipts. So if I do an ACH or some Swift payment, like where's my message? Like dMail, like I could very easily do that with our product, right?
So I want to piggyback on that encryption.
Oh, I'm back. Are we done talking about Ripple?
Question. It's safe. It's safe.
Safe now.
So yeah, Kirk, someone asked me earlier that how do you guys encrypt the emails? Scatter doesn't support using your private keys to encrypt emails. So are you generating these like local private keys, or are you using a centralized server to store those keys? Like what kind of implementation are you guys using?
Yeah. Just one second. I'm curious whether these people are putting wallet addresses or if that's like just some word I don't know. But anyways, okay. So encryption. So like we use AES 256 encryption on the server side. So we do have keys to encrypt and decrypt. This is kind of what we did to get to our beta. It's not our end goal. Our end goal would be end-to-end encryption, and that's right about Scatter. They don't. And we don't want to couple our service necessarily to any wallet. There's really 2 points where our service, where dMail itself interacts with the wallet. One is some gesture that says, this is me, this is my address, and I have the right to whatever content might be associated with this address, right? So it's kind of like a login. The second part is signing the email with a transaction. And I did transactions purposely because every blockchain and every token has a transaction that they can send. So stamps can work across every token and every blockchain. And so what happens is when I create the body of my message, that is sent to our server, encrypted on our server, and decrypted as you've auth to read. And it is not our end goal. It's not like, even Telegram does this. There's a lot of services that do this. It's symmetric encryption. It's not that unheard of, but some crypto bros don't like this and think that it's not the most secure thing ever. But like, I'm a product person, and from the research that I've seen and just like my background in products, I think that people care about privacy, obviously, right? But it's not like a deal breaker for some people that it's not some fancy end-to-end encryption. But in an ideal world, even if a government came to dMail asking about somebody's messaging, I shouldn't have the ability to disclose that, and I don't want the ability. I don't want to ever read a person's message. I do not ever want to provide it to a government. That's the whole point of blockchain. But I also don't want to be biddling in for a year without launching a product as well. So it's kind of an iterative approach.
Have you ever heard this before?
Mark Wahlberg? That's funny, but he's pretty sexy actually, dude. I'm gonna take that as a
Yeah, I see it. I don't know why. Maybe I was just at Wahlburgers like a week or two ago. It's like they have a restaurant chain now. They have,
mom will love you.
They have like Donnie Wahlberg, I think, was like a new kid on the block, and then Mark Wahlberg was like famous actor in like boy band, and then there's this other Wahlberg brother who's like a chef, and that he runs this restaurant. With his
my mom's all about that. She's all about Wahlburgers or whatever.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm gonna tell her that.
It's pretty good. So,
yeah, but encryption, just to follow up on that, a very important thing, obviously. And our ideal roadmap, like I have like this fantasy roadmap that I built, and then I was like, okay, like let's come back to reality. How can we make this thing real within 2 months? Which was like my development schedule for it. So, in an ideal world, everything is completely decentralized, IPFS, because right now we do store messages on a centralized server. Like I'm not trying to hide that fact at all, but IPFS kind of sucks. And so
yeah, IPFS is not decentralized at all. Like most people don't know that.
Yeah. Like I ran an IPFS node and kind of tried it, and then I realized how much it sucked and how much everybody else was suffering from using it. And like we have to give, like I'm always talking shit about this whole like mass adoption thing, and like I know that it offends some of my friends, but like if we really did care about that, we can't build on IPFS today. Like that's just the reality. Even wallets. Like when you build a dApp, like if anybody who's a dApp developer and like actually in the mix every day, like Fred, like Ben, all these other people, they'll tell you straight up that the biggest problem here is wallets and accounts. It's just such a point of friction that it's almost unusable in a way. So
we agree. Like we just integrated Transit API, which has been pretty great. But like in the beginning, when we were integrating scatter, there were so many problems with it, like just different. It was just a pain in the ass. And we also, like on the account side, this is why we have like a solution for our non-EOS account holders. So you actually use EOS sessions without like an EOS account. Don't get me wrong, I think the account system is fantastic in that you could actually do things for free. Once you have an account and you can stake stuff. But until you get to that point, like that hurdle is so high, it's almost impossible. Most people would just give up, honestly.
Yeah, yeah. And I know that there's a lot of chains that are trying to solve this. Like I know that Fred is going to do Link's chain, and I expect that to get some traction. Little shout out to Fred. And I think that, but I am a little bit of a biased party here. Like I have to admit that I'm a little bit of like a mainnet maximalist at this point, and I believe that what is going to happen is that just like CPU and net almost reached zero cost now with Rex, like why wouldn't that happen to RAM too? Like RAM to me is like the only real remaining problem actually. And once that's solved, it's like, what's the point of using anything else? I don't know, honestly. So
have you heard of DApp Network? Is this on?
Yeah.
With VRAM solutions? RAM is not a limitation. I don't think so. I think it could even be improved on further, but RAM, and I think we'll see it more with when Shintai 2.0 comes out too, because you'll be able to swap RAM from one chain to another potentially even. I don't think that's going to be a limitation. Like I'm saying with DApp Network, it's not a limitation, but then even beyond that, I think we have yet to see what Block 1 has coming out with IBCs, and like we have yet to see a successful sidechain either, where they are using the EOS token and using actual mainnet block producers to operate that sidechain. We have yet to see this stuff, but I think it's all coming this year. Like from everything I've seen,
Telos could do well. I think Link's chain hopefully will do well. I really like the approach, and the cool thing about Fred Krueger, is that he is an experienced, like battle-hardened, like entrepreneur. I actually look at him as sort of like an informal mentor. Like he calls me and I fucking listen. You know what I mean? Like, and he's willing to try stuff out. And I think that that's the kind of stuff that we need. I think that even mainnet kind of needs that. So I feel like what happens is that if people are really serious about an initiative, they might get ambitious to build a side chain, right? And so it's sort of, I compared it to like the grocery store model, where like if Whole Foods sees that like these certain like cakes or whatever are selling like crazy, they'll be like, oh, okay. Like then they'll come out with their 365 model, like water, you know what I mean? And they'll just put it on the shelf right next to that product. And I think that the mainnet can do that too. I almost feel like the CPU net that was just released that allows it, adapts an easier way to kind of pay for their user stuff is really just that. Because you hear enough gripes, then eventually you'll push forward that initiative on mainnet. So I think that side chains are really good in that way, is that, the mainnet will be like, oh, that's interesting. Well, we'll just do that ourselves.
This user agreement that passed recently, we're seeing like mass innovation already within just like a couple weeks since the EOS Universal Agreement passed, because we're able to implement these new features like lightning fast, because all it takes is 15 out of the 21 active producers to actually agree on these features. Like,
yeah, there's one thing I wanted to ask you guys, like, because you guys probably know this better than me. Like, I'm building a lot and I don't get to follow a lot of this stuff. I sort of wish that I could sometimes though, because it's kind of addicting. But like, I was kind of confused of why they're going to burn the savings account. I didn't really follow that entire thread.
Yeah, I don't really understand that either. I think turning off the faucet is more of an immediate like need of just stopping the inflation. But then like, I think that the savings, I see both sides to it. If we're not going to use it, then why not burn it? But I think if it's locked up and no one can touch it anyway, I don't know why we need to be in a hurry to do it, because there's a lot of different things we could use it for. It could be collateralized to create an EOS bank that could like loan people on a credit system. Like there's so many things that we probably haven't even thought of because we haven't openly discussed it long enough, because it's been so it's been like off limits for so long that like people aren't trying to innovate with it. Like everyone's afraid of the honeypot getting raided, but there's things that could benefit the entire network that we just need to talk about it.
I think that's like just like the main part. Like people see this big pile of money, and because right, if these tokens actually do get out to the market, what people think is that they're gonna tank the price of EOS tokens. And we saw the same thing with BitShares, where in the beginning there was actually like inflation, and then all the stakeholders just voted to end inflation, and then like once they ended the inflation, they don't have any more to fund the development, and that's one of the reasons why Dan left actually. So I don't know, like I am slightly concerned, but I do think that the way Dan did it this time, where like he raised the money and then he established his independent entity to fund the project. One of the things that I think he did that's really smart is that Block.one is like a separate entity from the EOS mainnet. Like obviously they have a stake in it, however, they're not tied to it. That means that if the EOS network and the EOS network operators, the BPs, decide to like go rogue or like decide to not pay people to develop products anymore, or whether not invest into the ecosystem anymore, they could just like, hey, we just back another EOS-based blockchain, like we just launch another chain.
You could just fork. I mean, you could just like airdrop 1-to-1 the entire main net and fork it to your own consensus rules. I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet, where we just have some sort of disagreement that's just like, all right, screw you guys.
Well, we had Telos now, so.
Well, I mean, Telos was on a Genesis snapshot. I'm talking like just a parallel universe almost with any type of rules. We haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I'm like, it seems kind of weird to me sometimes. I just, maybe that's why I don't follow it sometimes, because it feels political or something, and I try to be like not into politics at all, but it seems a little bit like it could be dangerous too, because like there's this fat wad of cash in this treasury basically, and then you kind of see greed come into play that, like why not, like even my own greed starts coming out. I'm like, why don't they use this money to like support the dApp developers that are, you know what I mean? And it's like, then you have the token holders are like, just burn it because that will create more scarcity, you know what I mean? And then that will be like, so.
I'm on board with burning like a portion of it. I think just burning the entire thing just makes no sense to me. I say burn a portion, and then whatever's left, we should talk about it. But because once it's gone, it's gone. Like there's no going back to it. Like I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't really have an opinion. Like I just don't know enough. I don't know, like these kind of new, like we're building like these like micro economies. They're complex, and as we've learned from 2017, it's like nobody knows what the fuck they're doing at all with building these token economies. Like, remember all of the stuff that we were being sold at the end of 2016 and 2017? It's like, yeah,
all the Ethereum projects
here and there, and none of that shit worked out,
Yeah, man. Like, I don't know, like this is especially true with Ethereum. I mean, I was in the scene. Like the space I'm working with have like Ethereum projects, and it just seemed like they don't have a viable business model. They're just like, oh, we don't have a business model, but we have a token. Ask if that's gonna solve anything. Like you gotta have, like, yeah, sure, you're gonna have a token because you're a cryptocurrency project, but you still have to have a viable business product, like business model. So I agree 100%.
Put it in an EOS DAO. There's probably just like really, I bet there's a really like a right answer. You know what I mean? That's why like I'm curious about it. And trying to understand like what is the sentiment of the voters. Are they just trying to like moon their tokens, or are they really caring about the ecosystem? Like I'm sure there's a sentiment there. Like I feel like Americans, when they vote for whatever initiatives, it's all just about like, now it's just becoming about like, what can I get from the government for free or something? And it's just like, that's not a good, like, this is not a good way to vote. And I almost feel like maybe token voters are like that too. Like they're just thinking about, how they can moon the token or something.
And it's like knee-jerk reactions. It's like, I bet the people that are the most vocal, not everyone, but I think there's a lot of uninformed people that are just like, burn it. But they like, no one's like modeled this out. Like, that's why I'm saying like, I'm fine with burning it. Maybe like, let's talk about it first is all I'm saying. Like,
I think Ben will understand this reference to like Aerys Targaryen, like burn them all. Like that's kind of what it feels like, dude. It feels like insanity, sort of. You guys watch Game of Thrones?
A little.
I'm like the only one that doesn't.
Anyways,
Someone asked
like,
when dMail. Are you probably finishing something? But someone else asked when dMail mobile, and I think that just happened recently, didn't it?
so not native mobile, and there's a lot of good reasons. And this is something that I'm kind of secretly like brainstorming. Is that I believe that the future of dApps are not baked into these wallets in the way that they are. I think the only reason why it's like this right now is because it's an elegant solution. It's a hack, but it's a really strange thing to like. It would almost be like if I wanted to use Instacart, that I would have to go to my Stripe app and then discover Instacart in my Stripe app and then buy my groceries through their portal. This is not the way payments work in the traditional world. And I've said this, and I know it probably bothers some people, but like, I think that that's not the end game for mobile wallets. I think that it's going to work like Stripe does today, where dMail is its own native client. And when a transaction happens, it uses a Stripe-like library for crypto to authorize the transactions. And that's something that I will build if nobody else does. Because this is the right native mobile experience, in my opinion. Like EOS Nights should have its own. Like, you guys play EOS Nights? Why do I have to hop in over to Meet One and do all this bullshit over there? Like, really, what should happen is I press a button, like a little modal is right there, and it's baked into native, and then I process my payment there. And I just assumed that Scatter or Lynx or somebody would do this, but because they're not, I think that there's a lot of opportunity there to build a really great mobile native solution. And so, but that being said, the way to access dApps on mobile right now is through the wallet. And so I think we're going to have native integration in Token Pocket. I've talked with those guys, and I hope they don't mind that I'm saying that, because I don't want to blow them up. And I don't know, maybe they changed their mind, but that's something that we're working on. It's already works in Lynx, so you can find the dApp there. But the problem with this stuff too is that our dApp will get lost inside of their like wallet browser ecosystem, so it's not super meaningful to us. So if having a native experience eventually will happen, but probably not anytime soon.
I think that's a huge problem also, or you mentioned that, like, once these dApps, like the dApp stores as they stand, they're like selective. They choose who's in there. And eventually, if everyone's in there, there'd be like hundreds of applications to go through. So how do you sort those? I talked to Scatter about this, because with the Scatter marketplace, I believe they're doing like their ranking systems based on RIDL, which is like their reputation token, and that's how everything's going to be sorted. But I'm I guess hesitant to think that that's always going to give you the best things at the top. And I don't know how to do a dApp store in a decentralized way without like someone controlling what you're seeing there initially, like on that first page or on like the pre-filtered page. Like, who decides what dApps get that spot? And I guess right now I don't know if it's all pay to play or if that's like,
it's like, so it's kind of cool in a way, because now I can go and like, play this political game of making sure that my dApp shows up. But I don't think that that's what we're aiming for with decentralization and crypto. Really, it's not in the spirit of what we're doing. So, like, these dApp stores are kind of like two layers of decentralization or centralization, if you think about it.
Yeah.
You gotta Apple's BS, right? And now I'm Jimmy rigged into somebody's app inside of an mobile app on the App Store. It's like, that's not where crypto needs to be.
So like, as a dApp developer, you have to you have to talk to every single wallet to get integrated in it. Basically, it sounds like.
We've been lucky that we've gotten integrated pretty much everywhere without even asking, which is pretty dope. I had to like beg before with another product that I built, EOS Dividends. It was like, I had to literally beg or almost pay or something, right? So, but I think that the future of like what I really believe is happening, and I've been in this industry for about 15 years actually total with this. Like, I was building applications in Flash, which were like highly interactive applications that, in my opinion, were 20 years beyond what HTML5 is now, right? And once the iPhone came out, Steve Jobs single-handedly destroyed that whole
Killed it.
grid. He killed it because he had a grudge with them, actually. Like, he could have supported Flash, even though it was resource intensive. There's some like engineering reasons behind it, but I've seen this play out a lot from being a web dev and an application dev for 15 years, and the way that what I really think that we need is a phone like an Android phone that doesn't have native applications at all. It simply has browser applications, because this allows you to bypass app stores. It allows anybody to build an application without permission, right? Like, that's what we really need. And people have tried and failed. Like, actually, Firefox tried to do this. But my belief is if right now we had a phone that supported web applications and not mobile applications.
Yes.
Is that still what we find when we Google it?
Yeah.
So my belief is that there's actually a big opportunity, and I think that crypto apps are the first thing that's actually proving that this theory could be right, is that we need mobile phones that support web applications easily. But see, like, the payment layers aren't compatible right now. And I think eventually it would be really awesome to just be web only. Like, there's no reason for it now. Even we're building native apps with JavaScript and HTML already. So, like, why do we need native anymore? We don't. That's my hope anyways.
Well, I have no idea about the research or ongoing development in that space for hardware phones. I know I've heard of some, but it's usually hearing about how they failed. So
yeah,
it's just really hard to get people off of their iPhones right now at this point. It could take something really big for people to actually sacrifice convenience for security.
I think a browser would make sense then. Like, if Block1 comes out with like a browser, I think that's a huge step forward already. Because, like, if you think about it, most of these dApps are just websites. So, like, if you have that, you have it baked in, you have your private key baked in, you're good to go. You don't need to, like, go jump through some hoops. Like, I don't know why anyone haven't built a browser yet. I know, like, well, I kind of
Brave.
know because but
so
not for EOS.
Gab, did you guys hear that Gab is forking Brave and building Bitcoin Lightning with that functionality? I think that we should do that on EOS too. I've kind of run this idea behind a few people that I know can, like, make it happen. But they're not really that into the idea. But I think that you're right, actually. I think that just imagine that you could download, like, some EOS browser into your phone, and now every dApp that you go to visit on your phone could potentially be you already have a wallet integrated with that experience, and it would be web. So that would be a really good solution, actually.
Yeah.
So how would you do push notifications through that? Would be, like, my only limitation I could think of.
Like, notifications for what?
Like to get a push notification, it has to be a native application.
So you could build a native browser on the iPhone that would be like just like how you can download Firefox onto your iPhone. Like, just imagine if that browser was an EOS-based browser with EOS wallet integration into it, then you can get APNS, the Apple push notifications on it. So you probably have to build a subscription model into it. And that's what the dApp browsers are trying to do right now. But I think it's better if it's generic in the way that, like, and ideally if, like, someone was using dMail on that EOS browser, they could, like, save it as, like, a home shortcut or something. And then it opens in the EOS browser every time you open it. And now the wallet is baked in. But, like, there's a lot of things to consider, dude. There's, like, security and how the keys are managed, and it's still on Apple's system. It's not perfect, but it could be a good step.
I didn't expect this endless dAppathon to actually be endless. I got to hop off for like a minute. So I have one more question around dMail, and then I got to say goodbye. What are your thoughts on a reputation? So I keep thinking about the anti-spam stuff. So earlier I asked if there would be a way to, like, increase your mail tokens required to get a message. How about, like, a reputation system where if enough people say that this account's spamming me, to just, like, downvote them in some way? Or is there anything in the works to kind of work with reputation, whether you're building it or using someone else's reputation, like a Riddle or something similar?
Yeah, people have proposed partnering with Riddle in some way to make, That would be a good way to realize what Riddle is doing. But the great thing about Mail is that I want it to be an open ecosystem. I think that eliminating spam, there is no silver bullet. I think that tokens as a signature is going to defeat over 50% of spam at the very least, because right now 89% of email is spam. On top of that, I believe that people can create whitelists on the chain that I don't even have to be involved in. Like, people could use their tokens, or somebody else could build their own system for spam lists. So there's a lot of possibilities there. Just like email, they have multiple ways to defeat spam. They have AI, they have whitelisting, they have marking spam as spam on an individual user level. And I would like to bring this all onto the blockchain. I think that would be awesome, because if I mark an account as spam, they're probably not the greatest actor. And that's probably relevant to Riddle too, because if they're spamming from a contract that's associated with a site or a service, that should in theory bring the reputation down somewhat too. So I think that there's a lot of possibilities here, but for now I'm not fully like dedicated to any particular solution other than the token signature.
Cool. Well, I gotta sign off, guys. It's been nice chatting. I think you're the last guest anyway, but I really hit my hard cap here.
Yeah, thanks for doing this, guys. This is a lot of fun. Let's talk later.
No problem, man.
Yeah,
I'll talk to you both afterwards. Later.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Thanks, Kurt. The schedule was a little bit messy, but I'm very, very happy to have you on. And we spoke for over an hour, almost an hour. So fantastic conversation. Yeah, so to anyone else still watching, don't worry, the airdrops are coming. I have not lied. So after this, I'll pull the CVS that has all your ES account. It shows me who showed up live and who haven't. Everyone will get it, but if you have showed up live, you get a little bit extra. So don't worry, they are coming. So yeah, thanks again, Kurt.
Yep.
For coming on.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Talk.